fishing news is brought to you by Navionics, Okuma, and Yozori.
Hi there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast for New England. I'm going to start off this week just reminding you this week marks the return to the weekly print schedule for subscribers. That's right, subscribers of the Fisherman receive a copy of the magazine each and every single week from April through November. This is more than just the 12 copies that you're going to find at your local newsstand. It comes up with a total of 38 issues every single year with your paid subscription. So head on over to thefisherman.com right now to sign up for a subscription if you have not already done so before you miss another issue. And along those lines, with the weekly magazine going to print each week, I got to throw out my annual request and a reminder for images for the magazine for use on the weekly cover and of course right here in my weekly videos. So if you've got some good recent catches or even some really good shots from last year that you want to share with me, send the original unedited high resolution digital images directly to me. Send them via email, tlapinski, that's TLAPINSKI at thefisherman.com. Be sure to throw in some general info on the catch, the angler's name, if you want to let me know any other details, if you want to tell where it was caught, boat it was caught on, anything else that's going to help round out the caption. And for instance, this week's cover, that first weekly, was submitted in just this manner, and I'm sure that it made for an extremely happy angler and family when it showed up on their doorstep this week. All right, let's see. Moving along, getting into the reports. I finally got a chance to get out and confirm those recent rumblings of river herring in local waters with some new footage that I shot on Tuesday in Connecticut. And while I was out, I ended up checking 4 different runs. Didn't find anything in the first couple, but the last one, I ran into some volunteers who assist the DEP in the weekly counts, and they report that more than 21,000 fish were counted over the weekend in a single stream. So hopefully a sign of a solid run ahead of us this year. There's already been a lot of bird activity around. I've been seeing ospreys for the last couple of weeks. There's a few of them soaring around here right now, so good things hopefully to come. And hot on the tails of those river herring, I've already begun seeing the old migration map for striped bass begin to make its annual rounds on the old interwebs over the last week or so. Now, before Monday's story of the massive striped bass landed in the canal makes its way to the next migration map update, I checked in with a good friend and correspondent Crazy Eyes for word on where you might find some stripers this weekend. It started off all right, and then he just started screaming and rambling about too many big striped bass caught last year. He scribbled something with a crayon, and he unfortunately proceeded to eat that crayon. So he was of little or no help this time around. Well, that's all right. Hopefully next week's team of contributors will prove to be more helpful. I've already put them on the task of working out an updated migration map of where you can find those striped bass, so stay tuned for their update next week. But for a more accurate and reliable report this week, I spoke with some of our valued local tackle shops and advertisers, and I got some really good info. Sounds like there's some really active holdover striped bass being caught in Connecticut into the 20-pound class in the usual array of large tidal and some of the smaller tidal rivers. And over in Rhode Island, got word from Snug Harbor, anglers are starting to poke around on the ocean front, especially with that warm weather we saw over the weekend. It probably got some of those fish starting to move. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten any confirmation back just yet as to anyone catching anything, but if you want to try to get out there and get a couple of your first fresh run schoolie striped bass, I urge you to check out the April edition of the Fisherman, the monthly edition. We got a great article from Dave Pickering. He talks about seeking spring striped bass with jigs and how they can be used from the top of the water column all the way down to the bottom. And if you do get out in the next couple of days over the weekend and get some striped bass shots, be sure to send those over to me, and hopefully we can feature them in next week's report. And speaking of honest, accurate, and always reliable contributors here at the Fisherman magazine, Nick Canaris sent me an email on Monday to say that he spent some time over the last week or so fishing the Connecticut River for crappie. He focused his efforts on the lower stretches of the river and notes that the coves and marinas were pretty much loaded with fish everywhere that he went. Unfortunately, the crappie were not terribly aggressive, and it took a small presentation with a slow sell action to really find some consistent success. Went on to talk about it some more with Nick, and he figures this bite's probably going to continue to improve as the waters continue to warm and the fish get closer to the spawn. But right now is really a good time to get in on the river and get out and fish. As he said, the main body of the river is still pretty clean because we haven't had that major snow melt up north. We haven't had the runoff bringing all the trees and sticks and mud and everything in. So get in on it before the river comes up too much. And before we ended our conversation, I checked with him about perch to see if he'd been running into any of them yet, and he said he hadn't really heard much or seen much on the white perch or the yellows just yet, but they really should be moving into the coves of the river any day now. That is, if we're going to see much of a run this year. All right, well, there you have it. I am Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine, wishing you tight lines if you head out onto the water this weekend.